Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Ivory, and you are tuned in to the Embracing Neurodiversity podcast, where I share my personal journey of embracing and enhancing the experience of my amazing son who is on the spectrum. Through this journey, I've discovered a lot about myself and continue to grow every day. My goal is to provide you with some useful insights and stories that will inspire you in your own parenting journey. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for supporting as always. Thank you for checking out the first video podcast visual. Today, I wanted to talk to you all about how sacred playtime can increase your bond with your child. I was reading on the Center for Disease Control, CDC website. Yes, I'm a little bit of a nerd, but I was reading about conscious parenting skills and how to effectively raise your child without having to lose sight of yourself, but also without harming your child in unsavory ways. One of the things they recommended in order to increase positive behaviors in your child was carving out time for playtime, one-on-one time with your child. And it got me to thinking about, what does playtime look like if you're raising a child on the autism spectrum who, as a parent, you may have difficulty bonding with, right? So, of course, I went down this rabbit hole of thoughts, and I began to reflect on how many parents often don't feel a bond with their child who is on the autism spectrum. A plethora of reasons. One of the primary reasons is if your child is nonverbal or has a speech delay that is relatively severe, then you may not hear a lot of endearing words from your child. I love you. The things that we're accustomed to communicating verbally to people in order to increase bonds. When you're raising a child who is nonverbal, you don't get that privilege, right? So that's one of the reasons some parents find it difficult to bond with their child. There are other ways outside of the topic today of playtime, but there are other ways to bond with your child who is nonverbal, which I am going to unpack another time. But with that, I know that's one of the reasons that bonding is difficult when your child is nonverbal. Another reason is there are children on the spectrum who may have a high sensitivity to touch, and therefore they don't want to hug or cuddle, and that's difficult for parents, right? Like, you want to hug and cuddle your baby, and that's something that they are not comfortable with, and so you tend to scale back, and therefore it decreases the bonding. And then lastly, parents oftentimes feel a lack of bond from exhaustion and frustration from the difficulties of raising a child on the spectrum, oftentimes from a spirit of positivity and not to speak negatively about your child. We shy away from saying that raising a neurodiverse child, particularly a child on the autism spectrum, can be difficult sometimes, but it's okay to acknowledge that. I always say it is incredibly rewarding, and it can be incredibly difficult sometimes. The silver lining, the positivity in that is that you can help shift those negative behaviors to decrease the difficulty over time. As I was exploring this article, it got me to thinking about my own experience, of course, and how I've learned over time that one-on-one time with a child without an agenda has helped with his behavior and our bond. But for me, like, I'm really super, super grateful that I've always had a bond with my son since before inception, or since inception, I should say. But one of the reasons that is the case is because even before I knew he had autism, and then after, we always had a desire to connect with each other and spend quality time with each other. And my son is very endearing and affectionate, and so that has helped. But what the playtime has done also is increase my child's ability to take direction from me and other adults without frustration or without pushback, right? I want to talk about how you can implement playtime with your child to both bond with your child and to increase their positive behaviors, right? Sacred playtime, what does that look like? The CDC recommends 5 minutes a day for at least 4 times a week, where you are, my son is in the background, but I'm going to keep going with this podcast, where you are sitting on the floor with your child or wherever they prefer to be, and you are literally just playing with them. You are not giving direction. You are not trying to teach them a lesson. You are not redirecting behaviors that are unsavory, like as long as it's not harmful to them. They throw a toy, like this is not the moment within that 5 minute sacred playtime. This is not the moment where you tell them not to throw the toy, or if they scream, this is not the moment to tell them to lower their tone. Like literally that 5 minute sacred playtime is for you to just be and allow your child to be and engage with them intimately. So what does that look like in practice? Don't worry, I got you. In practice, when you are engaging with your child in a playtime atmosphere, you are giving them lots of praise. Oh, I like how you are intentional about playing with your toys. I like this toy. It's so cool. Of course, limit critiques, ignore small behaviors, description and or imitation of what's happening. That is one of the recommendations. So what that looks like is, oh, I see you like that car. I see you driving that car. It's so cool. Or, oh, I see how you love this farm animal. That is so cool. Can you show me how it works? Like really zoning in on their interest and acknowledging it. Limit your questions. I know this is so hard for parents because we're so curious about our child and their abilities and what's going on with them. And so you try to analyze what's happening. But questions is it's another form of trying to teach, but also it's a heavy lift for a child because now you have removed a moment for them of being in the moment, playing with their toys, and enjoying their parent just being with them. And you have required them to think about responding to you. And one of the things that stood out in the article for me was that in the span of a day, as a parent, you are constantly giving your child directives. You are constantly asking them questions. You are constantly redirecting behaviors, even when you don't know it. And if you think about that from the position of a child or any human being, really, when they are constantly hearing, okay, brush your teeth, okay, put on your clothes, okay, eat your breakfast, don't do that, stop, no more tablet, put that away, lower your voice, get off the couch, no jumping. If they're constantly hearing that all day, that can be a lot. And we do it with good intention. We want to make sure that they're safe and that they're learning life skills. But it can be overwhelming and frustrating. And so what can happen in those moments is that it's a buildup for a child and maybe they withdraw or they act out in other spaces, right? And so what that 5 minutes of sacred playtime does is increases the environment of you and your child just bonding with no expectations, and then it releases your child's their guard and increases their safety with you. And so that's the goal ultimately, is that they feel safe and they feel seen. And that's what that playtime does. Active listening is very important. So if your child is verbal and does speak to you, make sure that you're listening to what they're saying by repeating what they said. And again, limiting asking questions, but just repeating what they said, or answer with a yes or agreement. But active listening is super important. Allow your child to lead. So if you see them playing with a toy, you're going, oh, this is cool. Can I play with it? Or describe the toy in detail or describe what's happening. That goes back to that description piece. But don't say, oh, let's play with this toy. Don't take over the playtime, because then you're putting a child back in a position where they are now in your world, and the goal is for you to enter theirs, right? The reason why it's recommended that 5 minutes a day for at least 4 days a week, the reason why that's the recommended like tone and cadence in terms of time is because, believe it or not, that 5 minutes of just being, observing, active listening, acknowledging, praising, not giving directives, not trying to teach, not taking over is not easy. Like, it is difficult because that's something that we are used to doing all day. And you would be surprised how you have to be conscious of that in that 5 minutes. And then you will make mistakes and you'll probably redirect the behavior that is not positive, or you will probably ask a loaded question or want to play with another toy. But just remind yourself to go back to being engaged with your child and try that out for a couple of weeks to see how it works. Lastly, I'll say this. When you are having difficulty bonding, I think it's important to take yourself out of the equation and learn what your child mode bonding looks like. Shift to that. And once you do, you'll find joy and bonding in that environment, right? Where your child bonding exists. And so it's really a matter of shifting your mindset and shifting your behaviors towards what works for your child, which ultimately will work for you in terms of the bonding piece. The other ways that you could connect with your child and bond is before bed, reading and having a moment with them again where there's no directives and no teaching and no real intention, but spending that quality time. Being silent and cuddling if your child is comfortable with that. Like, that goes a long way. This approach to sacred playtime with your child for that 5 minutes a day, 4 days a week is recommended for children between toddler age and school age. So 2 to 10 maybe. CDC recommends that, but I would say even as they become preteens, try to incorporate that into their lives, that sacred one-on-one time, even if it's just for a couple of minutes a day. This had me thinking too. I was watching an interview that Shonda Rhimes did with Oprah years ago, and she has, I think, 2 daughters, and Oprah asked her, how do you balance it all with being like this TV producer and writer and have this busy, large life, but you have 2 children and I believe that she's a single mom. And so how do you manage all of that? And so she said that even when she's at home and she's in the middle of writing a script, if her child comes over and wants to play, like, she has committed to saying, okay, she said 15 minutes. I'm going to give you 15 minutes until she'll stop when she doesn't give that 15 minutes. And once she does that, by that point, like, her child is over her and she can go back to her work and her child feels content and seen and heard and acknowledged. And now as a parent, you can not worry about that piece and focus on your work. And to my knowledge, I don't believe that her children have any special needs or neurodiverse in any way. So this goes for any child, but obviously this is specifically for my parents raising neurodiverse children. Thank you all for listening and tuning in. I hope that this can be helpful for you all. Autism moms, parents of neurodiverse children in any capacity, hang in there, more than hanging there. You got this. Take care of yourselves, prioritize yourselves. If you need support in any way, check out some of my links below. I hope you all have a great week. This is the first week of school for my son. If your child is also starting school this week, sending you positive vibes. Until next time, bye.